So, my wife basically abandoned me and her two children. Well, 5 years later, she comes back groveling towards us. Why did she come back? Well, she must have found out about that new inheritance I got. Kyra was my college sweetheart, and honestly, sometimes when I think about one of the reasons we probably divorced, I think it had a great deal to do with karma. When I met Kyra, she already had a boyfriend. I'm not so proud to admit this, but then she cheated on her boyfriend with me. However, I urged her to break up with him so she could focus entirely on our relationship, which she did, or at least I thought she did. That guilt stayed with me for several years, but then I learned to get over it because we were so much in love and had future plans to get married. We finally did get married, and the first 5 years of our lives were really rosy together. However, I noticed that my wife had begun to grow distant from me. Kyra would complain about a great deal of things. Things like how I was hardly ever staying at home, how I did not please her sexually enough, how I was always broke, and how I was fond of restricting her from doing fun stuff ever since she got married. That last complaint got to me. I didn't want my wife to stop doing fun stuff simply because she got married to me. As a result, I stopped complaining, and then almost every night, my wife would go to the club or take several days away from home just to spend time with her friends. The kids needed their mom, but Kyra wasn't always here for them. This got me worried, and each time I called her attention to it, we would have a fight about it. I left Kyra alone to do her life as she pleased. At some stage, I'd already believed that our marriage was doomed, and that we were just cohabiting. I began to cut some days off at work just to concentrate more on the children, actions that Kyra didn't even notice. Years passed, and our marriage gradually became dead. Even though the love was hardly there anymore, I still remained faithful to my wife. Although there were days we had good times together, but those days were quite rare and few between, and could be counted in a year. Our marriage became worse when I grew suspicious of my wife's activities. It appeared that she was entertaining another man. I had the feelings, but did not confront her about it because I didn't want to hurt her emotions. However, one particular day, I caught my wife coming out of a hotel room with a man. My company was hosting some business program for that day, and we decided to use a particular nice spot in one of the hotels in town. The place is not only a hotel, but also has several halls for meetings, parties, you name it. A few hours into the meeting, I got bored, decided to move around the place, maybe check out the vending machines. I went to parts where the hotel rooms were based, and that's when I saw my wife coming from one of the rooms with a man. Well, she tried to deny it. I tried to give him all sorts of excuses, including the cliché excuse always given in situations like these. An excuse such as, "It's not what you think." I knew from that moment that there's no coming back from what I've seen. Our marriage was totally dead. I filed for a divorce, but then noticed that after that day I caught my ex-wife cheating, she became so unbothered about the divorce. I got to realize soon enough that the man I caught her cheating with, he must have promised to marry her, which was why she probably didn't care about the divorce. A mother should be bothered about her kids, but Kyra didn't really seem to be bothered. The court ruled that the kids stayed with me, not only because she cheated, but over the years, she'd had the irresponsible parent role, and I've been the one taking care of the kids in all aspects. My wife did not really seem too bothered. During that time, she was making preparations to wed the man she cheated on me with, and she probably didn't want to take custody of her kids, so they would just distract her from her new husband. I got custody of the children, and even the kids were happy that I did. The last 2 years before the divorce, they've completely withdrawn from their mother because of her lack of attention. I tried my best to paint a very good picture about their mom, but it did not seem to be working. Years passed, and I did all my best to concentrate on the children. Around this time, too, my dad, who was a widower, also made it his priority to build a relationship with his grandkids. He knew how very stressful my work was, and because of that, the kids were always with him during the holidays or at any given school/free days. About some months ago, I got a promotion at work from my dedication, and also, My father decided to finally announce the inheritance he planned for the children. When I was younger and unmarried, my father gave me a large amount of money to basically start my life. That was around the time I got to meet Kyra, and I did not hesitate to spoil her so much with part of the money. Unfortunately, I was young, I was reckless. I made an investment with a larger percentage of what I had left from my inheritance, but I lost the business deal, which also made me lose money. By this time, I was already married to Kyra and had my 2 children. The investment loss affected me not only financially, but psychologically as well. This was also around the time that I started to have some issues with Kyra. When I come to think about it, I believe that one of the major reasons why my marriage with Kyra died was because of the inheritance I lost. When my father heard about it, he told me there's nothing he could do. I'd already made my decision by gambling away the inheritance. In fact, I expected nothing else from my father, and if he had offered to give me any other amount of money, I would have declined because of integrity reasons. However, about some months ago, my dad called just to tell me that he had some college and house funds set aside for my children. The fund was worth $500,000, which is quite a small fortune. I was extremely surprised because for many years, my father never told me about setting aside inheritance for his grandchildren. However, he had already determined that once the children were over 12 years of age, he would make announcements on the fund. My firstborn was already 14 and my second was 12, so it was due time to make the announcement. Apart from this, my promotion at work would make me and my kids very comfortable. For the first time in over 8 years, I was able to get my children things I could not afford before. My father decided to announce the inheritance to my kids on a very special day. So, Thanksgiving Day rolls around. My kids, me, my father, and my youngest sister were at the dining table when my father announced the $500,000 college and house funds to the children. They were beyond joy, and even before we finished dinner, my son had already begun to promise his grandfather that he would do amazing in college. Once again, we were in wealth, not just because of the funds, but also because of my work promotion. A week after the announcement at the dinner table, my ex-wife called me saying that we need to see and talk. I didn't know what it was about, given it's been 5 years since we've reached out to each other. That aside, within those 5 years, Kyra never even bothered to reach out to the children, neither did she ask about their well-being. I was curious and needed to know why she suddenly called to see me, so I accepted to meet up with her. We met up at a restaurant and she looked really unhappy. For someone who left her previous marriage to marry a really wealthy man, she should have been looking all radiant, but then she wasn't. I asked her if everything was all right, and then she told me, not really. I was being really calm with her because there was just no reason to be angry anymore. There's no reason to be dramatic over something that happened 5 years ago, and apart from that, I'd accepted the fact that Kyra would never be there for her children. Even the children didn't care about her anymore. I assumed that Kyra would ask about the children, but then I was in for a shock. When she told me she's heard about the $500,000 and she wanted her son to be part of it. Correction, she wanted our son. I was confused because we only had 2 children together, and if Kyra had any other kids, it would be from the man she was currently with. She then told me she had a son who's about 5 years of age, and I was truly the biological father. At the time we were still together 5 years ago, me and Kyra were hardly even living as a couple. But then, Kyra told me that she was already pregnant before we got a divorce. I found that really hard to believe, and then reminded her about how she cheated on me. She then said she knew who the real father of her child was and that it was me. Kyra claimed that the reason she never told me was because we were already filing for a divorce, and that someone was willing to marry her, so it only made sense she pinned the pregnancy on him. I asked if her husband knew, and she said that he didn't. I insisted that I knew nothing about the child, and she kept claiming I am the father. She demanded that her son, whom I knew nothing about, be part of the $500,000 college funds. It then dawned on me that the only reason why Kyra reached out to me was because of inheritance. I asked how she even got to know about it, but then she told me not to worry about such details. However, I'd already made my guess about how she knew. My younger sister was at the Thanksgiving table at the day of the announcement. For a while, I'd forgotten that my sister and ex-wife were still friends. She must have told Kyra about it. I confronted my sister about it, and then she said that she didn't know. Yeah, Kyra was going to call me about it and demanded that her third child be a part of the funds. I went home that day and began to wonder why Kyra was really interested about the funds. Since the man she got married to was literally a millionaire, she shouldn't be so worried about her kids sharing a $500,000 fund. And 2 other kids, that she abandoned. I took the next few days to investigate Kyra's lifestyle, and then I found out Kyra's husband was currently broke due to very bad investments he's made. Just like the mistake I made so many moons ago. He also lost a major part of his wealth to some investments that simply failed. I also found out that because of her husband's financial loss, Kyra was not really on good terms with him. She'd been having issues with him ever since he went broke. Well, that was typical of her, given the fact that she also did the same to me. Kyra didn't stop there. She kept calling, demanding that her 5-year-old kid, Michael, shared the inheritance with my 2 kids because Michael was my son. I then told her, okay, you know what? In that case, we should go for a DNA test. Well, of course, Kyra wouldn't accept us to take a DNA test. She tried to avoid it at all cost. However, she told me that even if Michael wasn't my son, he still had a right to the inheritance for 2 reasons. The first reason was that she had stayed and suffered with me for many years, and as my ex-wife who already bore me 2 kids, she's not a stranger. The second reason is even crazier. She's claiming Michael was related to her other 2 kids, either as a half or full sibling. She then said it would be somewhat awkward if her other 2 kids had inheritance of their own, and they had one other sibling out there who didn't. Obviously, her excuses were so dumb. Kyra simply had no shame, and so tried to gaslight me into sharing my kid's inheritance with her 5-year-old son. For several years, she abandoned her first 2 kids simply because she found a millionaire to take care of her. She didn't ask about them or regard them in any way. Neither did she ask about how they fended. My younger sister told me that Kyra never for once asked about her kids from her. It was that bad. Just when I thought it was all over, Kyra then tried to reach out to the kids she abandoned. She reached out to our first son on Facebook, telling him how much she really misses him and his younger sister. She then said she wishes to see him, and so he should make that happen. My son clearly refused. He said he could smell her lies. He blocked her. As for my 12-year-old daughter, Kyra stalked her, waiting for Nina to close from school one afternoon. She went into school to compound to see Nina, who was about 7 years old at the time that Kyra left, still very much recognized her mother. Nina told me how her mother took her to the restaurant across the school just to speak with her. She told Nina that the separation wasn't her fault and I would not allow her to see them for several years. That was just a lie that Kyra cooked up to manipulate Nina into accepting her mother and considering sharing the funds. However, I was able to assure Nina that Kyra never for once reached out to her or Jordan, my other kid. I had to do something about this issue. I wouldn't let Kyra manipulate me or the kids into sharing inheritance with a son I knew nothing about. I decided to reach out to her husband. It's time to have a little chit-chat. After finding out where he worked, I went to his workplace, but his security guards would not allow me in. I then found the courage to go where him and Kyra resided. Fortunately, Kyra wasn't around when I met her husband. I told her husband about how she had been demanding to share part of my children's inheritance, even claimed that her 5-year-old son could be mine. Guys, He was so shocked. He had no idea that Kyra was after some certain inheritance. He explained to me that his finances had gone down the drain within the last couple of months, and ever since it happened, Kyra had been hostile towards him. It suddenly became clear to him that Kyra was only after his wealth. About a week later, I heard that Kyra's husband had to file a divorce. They had a fight about the issue, and he decided that it was best they separate. That isn't all. Kyra's husband demanded they carried out a DNA test for their son. He found out that Michael wasn't even his son. Neither was the son mine. Kyra was dating someone else around the time I caught her cheating. But most likely she did not marry him because he was also broke. Kyra tried reaching out to me, begging that she's a part of the children's lives, but then I would not accept that. I've lived without her for the past 5 years, and she didn't bother to look back. Not until she went broke and heard about the inheritance. After Kyra's divorce, she was left with almost nothing but her 5-year-old son. She went back to scratch. No job, no money, no husband. Well, Kyra is currently on the verge of becoming homeless and losing her child. Yeah, forever. So I think it speaks absolute wonders whenever the mother tried to manipulate the younger children, especially the brother, who's the older sibling, and he just saw straight past her lies. I think he specifically said he could smell her lies. Let me know your thoughts down below. It has to be truly toxic situation for children that young to just straight up realize that, hey, this person's bad. Stay away. She abandoned me, she abandoned my father, everybody. Also, she could chase after a rich husband, and guess what? She got served karma on a silver platter, and it was a cold meal. Let me know your thoughts on this one, guys. This one was very dramatic and intense. I would like to know if you've had any similar situations like this, or you know anybody that has. Drop your comments down below. If you're not subscribed to the channel, just know I drop videos every single day across my 3 channels. If you want to subscribe to the others, you can check it out in the description below. And just know, this week coming up, I have some absolute bangers. I can't wait to see you there.